Olá e feliz Dia Mundial da Língua Portuguesa! Por causa desta ocasião maravilhosa, vamos mostrar um pouco dos nossos talentos linguísticos e fazer esta apresentação numa combinação de inglês e português. Então, mais uma vez, chamo-me Krystle Norman, a Conselheira Adjunta para a Educação, Imprensa e Cultura na Embaixada dos Estados Unidos em Lisboa. Muito obrigada pela vossa presença e bem-vindos à nova edição do Storytellers Summit com uma convidada especial, a nossa cônsul fantástica do Consulado dos Estados Unidos nos Açores, Kathryn Hammond. Antes de continuar, queria agradecer a todas as escolas por terem participado nestas sessões virtuais e queria reconhecer todos os esforços dos professores. Agora, queria mencionar também que aproveitamos hoje para celebrar outra ocasião muito importante para os Estados Unidos esta semana, o que é o Dia de Diplomacia. Todos os anos, na primeira sexta-feira de maio, o Departamento de Estado celebra o Dia de Diplomacia, o retorno anual para os aposentados de Foreign Service e Civil Service. Este dia também comemora os membros do corpo diplomático que fizeram o maior sacrifício e perderam a vida servindo os Estados Unidos no estrangeiro. Tanto uma ocasião solene quanto uma celebração, o Dia de Diplomacia reconhece os diplomatas e a sua dedicação e serviço ao abordarem a política externa e os desafios de desenvolvimento em todo o mundo. Portanto, em celebração do Dia Mundial da Língua Portuguesa e do Dia de Diplomacia, aproveitamos a oportunidade para convidar uma diplomata fantástica que vai falar não só da sua experiência aprendendo português, mas também a sua experiência única vivendo como diplomata e americana no mundo lusófono. É um prazer apresentar-lhes Kathryn Hammond, a nossa cônsul nos Açores, baseada em Ponta Delgada. Mas primeiro, vamos mostrar um vídeo divertido que fizemos com alguns dos meus colegas da embaixada, incluindo Kathryn, dando o seu melhor nos trava-línguas e ditados portugueses. Vamos lá.
To celebrate World Portuguese Language Day, I invited a few friends from the embassy to have a little fun. Mas cuidado, português é muito lindo, mas um pouco traiçoeiro. Vamos lá.
Limão, 1000 limões. Limão, 1000 limões. milhão de limões.
Limão, 1000 limões. milhão de limões.
Limão, 1000 limões. milhão de limões. 3 pratos de trigo. 3 pratos de trigo para 3 tigres tristes.
3 pratos de trigo para 3 tristes tigres. Ok, uma vez. 3 pratos de trigo para 3 tristes tigres.
3 pratos de trigo para 3 tigres tristes. Casa suja. Suja casa. Tchau suja. Casa suja.
Casa suja, chão sujo. Chão sujo, casa suja.
Casa suja, chão sujo. Chão sujo, casa suja.
Fresco como uma alface.
Fresco com uma alface. Velhos são os trapos.
Velhos são os trapos.
Velhos são os trapos. Pão, pão, queijo, queijo.
Pão, pão, queijo, queijo.
Pau, pau, queijo, queijo.
Pão, 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 queijo.
Uau! Partiram a louça toda. Como vocês podem ver, nós adoramos o português. E eu sinto-me como um peixe na água cá. Feliz Dia Mundial da Língua Portuguesa and Happy World Portuguese Language Day.
Oh, that was great. That was great. I love that video and hope you did enjoy it too. I mean, Portuguese is so beautiful, but it's a little tricky. I think we did a really good job. Good job there, Kathryn. Agora, o consulado em Ponta Delgada é, na verdade, o mais antigo consulado dos Estados Unidos no mundo. E tenho celebrado o ano passado 225 anos. E por isso, muito obrigada pela tua presença hoje, Kathryn, e passo a palavra a ti. Bem-vinda a Storytellers Summit com as nossas escolas, do nosso network de escolas. Como está hoje?
Muito obrigada, Krystle. Boa tarde e olá dos Açores. Estou muito satisfeita por passar a minha tarde com vocês, a celebrar o Dia Mundial da Língua Portuguesa. Em primeiro lugar, queria falar um pouco sobre mim. O meu nome é Kathryn Hammond, vivo em Ponta Delgada com o meu marido, com o nosso filho de 2 anos e com 2 gatos. Atualmente, o meu marido não está a trabalhar e adora estar em casa a cuidar do nosso filho. Ele trabalhava em segurança de computadores, mas deixou de trabalhar para ser pai a tempo inteiro. Vivemos aqui desde julho de 2019 e vamos ficar até julho de 2022. Antes de vir para os Açores, vivi em Washington. Normalmente trabalho na parte de segurança do Departamento do Estado. Esta é a minha primeira vez na minha carreira que não estou ligada diretamente a essa parte. O que quer isso dizer? Em qualquer país estrangeiro, sou responsável pelos fuzileiros e pelos seguranças da embaixada ou consulado. Temos fuzileiros e seguranças nas embaixadas e consulados para proteger pessoal, informações e infraestrutura. Antes dos Açores, estive em 3 países: no Afeganistão, de 2009 até 2010, no Brasil, no nosso consulado no Rio de Janeiro, de 2010 até 2012, e também no Gabão, na costa oeste da África, de 2015 até 2016. Quando não estou fora dos Estados Unidos, trabalho em Washington. Sou uma polícia federal nos Estados Unidos e sirvo de guarda-costas a visitantes importantes de outros países, assim como investigo crimes. Alguns desses crimes dizem respeito a pessoas que obtenham individualmente passaportes americanos e vistos. Gosto muito do meu trabalho de segurança, mas também estou a gostar muito do que eu faço em Ponta Delgada. Adoro viver aqui e adoro representar o meu país nos Açores. O meu título é Cônsul. E os Estados Unidos são o único país com representação diplomática nos Açores. Como cônsul, emito certidões de nascimento para bebês americanos que nascem aqui. Para estes, terão 2 certidões de nascimento, a portuguesa e a americana. Com a certidão de nascimento americana, eles podem pedir o seu passaporte americano, mas não faça só passaportes para bebês. Também aceito formulários para passaportes para adultos. Existem muitos americanos nos Açores. Não sabemos o número exato, mas sabemos que ultrapassam os 5.000. Como os Açores têm cerca de 240.000 habitantes, o número de americanos é significativo. A grande maioria tem dupla nacionalidades, são americanos e portugueses. Também faz parte do meu trabalho ajudar os americanos em dificuldade. Se perdem o seu passaporte, ou se tem de ir para o hospital, ou infelizmente se vão presos, mas já há algum tempo que não temos nenhum americano preso nos Açores, e espero que continue assim. Mas tento ajudá-los da melhor maneira possível. Ajudar os americanos é a minha prioridade, mas também trabalho de perto com o governo regional dos Açores. E tento ajudar estudantes açorianos que querem ir estudar para os Estados Unidos e vice-versa. Tal como a Krystle mencionou, o Consulado dos Estados Unidos nos Açores é atualmente o consulado mais antigo do mundo. Está aberto há 226 anos. O seu aniversário é a 7 de julho. É um facto que me deixa muito orgulhosa por estar aqui. Além de mim, trabalham 3 colegas portugueses. É muito importante ter pessoas a trabalhar que conhecem a política local e as políticas, assim como as leis e procedimentos. Torna o meu trabalho mais fácil. E agora vou partilhar algumas imagens das minhas viagens pelo mundo lusofono. Vitor, pode partilhar? Obrigada. Esta primeira foto é no Sambódromo, no Rio de Janeiro, onde tive a sorte de poder ver um desfile de carnaval. Próximo, Vitor. Este seguinte é um vídeo e foi gravado na praia de Ipanema. Este é um desporto que não vi em mais lugar nenhum do mundo. Eles são incríveis. Futebol.
Menino está aqui. Vai, ladrão!
Os jogadores não podem usar as mãos. É incrível. Próximo, Victor. Esta foto é de um jogo entre o Fluminense e o Vasco da Gama. Os fãs têm de se identificar quando compram os bilhetes para a polícia os manter separados na saída do estádio. Assusta um bocadinho. Próximo. Este é do Pau de Açúcar, no Rio de Janeiro, a praia de Copacabana. E esta é em Paraty, fica mais ou menos 4 horas do Rio de carro. Paraty foi colonizada por portugueses no século XVI. É noite de lua cheia e quando a maré está cheia, a água entra pela cidade dentro. Fazem uma grande festa ao Espírito Santo, tal como nos Açores. Próximo. Tirei essa foto em Manaus, no Brasil, numa viagem no Rio Amazonas. O edifício amarelo é uma escola e o barco que está à frente é o transporte para a escola. Próximo. As próximas 2 fotos são de São Tomé e Príncipe. Quando estive no Gabão, visitei São Tomé 2 vezes. Os portugueses chegaram aqui por volta de 1470. A primeira foto foi durante uma festa do 4 de julho que a embaixada celebrou em São Tomé. Uma banda militar tocou durante a festa. Próximo. O meu marido tirou essa foto. Passamos um dia no mar à procura de baleias Infelizmente, não vimos nenhuma. O edifício verde e amarelo é um museu que fala de preservação das tartarugas. Próximo. E, finalmente, algumas fotos dos Açores. O meu marido adora tirar fotos com o drone. A primeira é debaixo da Ponta Delgada. Próximo. Esta outra é de uma igreja linda que fica perto da nossa casa, Mãe de Deus. Próximo. Esta é um Cell Hawk. Podemos ir de bicicleta desde a nossa casa. Tem uma área para tomar banho, mas é preciso ter cuidado com as águas vivas e com as caravelas. Próximo. Esta é de quando visitamos a ilha mais pequena dos Açores. Estamos na Ilha do Corvo, que só tem 400 habitantes. Fomos de barco desde a vizinha Ilha das Flores e passamos o dia. Próximo. Estes são do aniversário do consulado, o ano passado. À direita é o bolo de aniversário e à esquerda as portas da cidade de Ponta Delgada, iluminadas de vermelho, branco e azul, as cores da bandeira dos Estados Unidos nos 225 anos do consulado. Próximo. Esta é de outra das 9 ilhas dos Açores. Essa igreja azul fica na ilha de Terceira. Próximo. E esta foto mostra os meus pratos favoritos da ilha da Terceira. Tem uma queijada Dona Amélia, em honra da última rainha de Portugal, alguns dos queijos deliciosos dos Açores, e também tem um gelado de chocolate com queijo, que vem da ilha de São Jorge. Próximo. E esta última foto é da Ilha do Pico. A montanha do Pico é o ponto mais alto de Portugal e eu e o meu marido subimos o verão passado. E gostaria de passar a palavra a Krystle.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Kathryn. That was a fantastic presentation and some great highlights from your time in the Lusophone world. So after, seeing that presentation and before we open it up to questions, I just put in the chat that this rest of the presentation will be in English, and we look forward to hearing all of your great questions when we actually finish this next part. But I'd like to ask you a few more questions about your journey in Portugal specifically and how you learned Portuguese. So first question, how did you first learn Portuguese and what surprised you most about the language?
Sure. I first learned Portuguese at the Foreign Service Institute, which, as you know, is where the State Department teaches foreign service personnel languages before going on to their postings around the world. I had just left Afghanistan and I spent 3 months studying Portuguese before arriving to Brazil in December 2012. I think what surprised me most about Portuguese is how lyrical it is. It can be like a song, and I think that's why songs sound so good in Portuguese, because the language is already like you're singing.
Absolutely, I would totally agree. It's very poetic, the language, and I think that's what makes us just fall in love with it. Is there an interesting historical figure that you discovered during your time in Portugal? We know you love history and we love that you love exploring as well. So could you tell us about someone you learned about that was, from Portuguese culture that has really stuck with you?
Sure, and I'm cheating a little bit, and I know I've told you about this person before, but with the 225th anniversary last year, I spent a lot of time researching past U.S. consuls. Our first U.S. consul in the Azores is actually buried in Ponta Delgada, 200 meters from my house. He's buried there, and I visited his grave on the 225th anniversary. But one of the most interesting consuls that I learned about was William Henry Hunt, who arrived to the Azores in 1929, the first African-American consul, U.S. consul in the Azores, and the first African-American to serve an entire diplomatic career with the State Department. And you mentioned that it's this day of diplomacy at the end of the week on Friday, and no more fitting person than to pay homage to him in this week of diplomacy.
Absolutely. No, that's great. That's great. He was definitely an incredible a revelation to me, and really shows the links between the United States and Portugal. So as many other Americans do, you've clearly enjoyed your time in the Azores, from all of the photos and the clouds to the sunsets and your visits to all of the islands. Can you explain how speaking Portuguese fluently has really enriched your personal and professional experiences here?
Yeah, I think it's a sign of respect. I think in my meetings with government officials here, I want to speak Portuguese. I want to show respect to my hosts because they're my hosts here, and I work closely with them. One thing I've found over the past year, though, is that I'm actually speaking English quite a bit as well, with tourism dropping off. There's a lot of people who are getting a little bit rusty with their English here in the Azores. So anytime anybody wants to speak with me in English, I'm happy to help them keep up that skill, because language is a perishable skill.
Right. No, absolutely, absolutely. I'm glad that you're helping as well. People like to practice English, and that's fantastic. And I agree, the respect is so important. That is the way that we can show the most respect to the country that has welcomed us with such hospitality, by learning a little, making a few mistakes along the way, but really trying to understand the culture and the history and the shared values. That's great. So I know you have a little bit more time left in the Azores, another year, right?
Yes.
What will you miss most about the Azores once you actually have to finish up your tour here and go on to the next adventure?
Well, I think my son, who you saw at the end of that video with his 3 paws and 1 queijo, I think what he'll miss most is the cows, and it's kind of an Azores joke, but we do have a lot of cows here. And we spoke a little bit about this, but we are bringing him up bilingual Portuguese and English. So it's something that was really important to both myself and to my husband, that he have that ability to speak more than one language. For me, I think it's living so close to the water. I love living near the water. There's not a day that goes by here that I don't see the water. I think it calms you. I love, my ideal day would just be spent looking at the water, which is why my desk actually does not face the water, because I wouldn't get a lot of work done. So I have my back to the water at the consulate.
Right. No, that's great. That's great. And what would be, the last meal that you would have in the Azores before you leave?
It's either beefy regional or prego no pão. I love them both, but it's a tough choice. But you know what? I can have a last lunch and a last dinner in the Azores.
Exactly. And pregos, I'm sure, are as good in the Azores as they are in Portugal. I must try the next time I'm out there. Another question, what advice would you give students who are currently learning English as a second language based on your language journey, in terms of being resilient, in terms of how to learn it well? What would be your advice to a language student?
Yeah, I mean, go easy on yourself. learning a language is not easy. You know, if you can't think of a word, try to think of another way to say it. You know, the biggest thing is to not get stuck. I remember there was this time I couldn't think of the word for octopus in Portuguese. So I said, o animal do mar com oito braços. And the person understood what I was saying, but just don't get stuck. And you might think, well, that's silly, but if the other person has learned a language as well, they're going to understand that you're doing your best. And sometimes the best you can do is the sea animal with 8 arms.
Exactly. Oh, we love the octopus. Oh, povo lagreiro. Very good, very good. Okay, so we have one question from the chat. The first question is, where are you from in the United States?
So originally I'm from New York, and this is a question that Krystle probably has trouble with sometimes, because State Department personnel always, you know, segment their lives into different parts. But I was born in New York and raised in New York.
Oh, great. Which part of New York?
Long Island.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
East of New York City.
Nice. And then another question is, where do you like to live? Where have you enjoyed living the most in terms of all the places that you've lived in the Foreign Service or overseas?
You know, I really, really do love living in the Azores. You know, we brought my son here when he was 3 months old. So while he did live for a little bit in the United States, he's now lived here for 22 months. So this is really the only home he's ever known. And you know, it's just so safe here. There's really no worries that I have here on a day-to-day. Of course, the islands are volcanic, so you can't forget that. But I've never had a thought that that's something that's dangerous here. It's there's so much to love about the Azores. But really, I mean, all of my tours I've loved. I loved being in Gabon in Africa. I also loved my tour in Afghanistan. I felt like I was really doing a lot there, and that some of the work there I did helped save lives, which that's difficult to say about any other place I've ever lived. So they're all different, but all very memorable.
Absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. What a variety of experiences, you know, from the Lusophone world to Africa and Afghanistan. It's Foreign Affairs Day. Well, we're celebrating at least this week. And someone asked, why did you decide to become a diplomat? What was your original motivation for picking this career?
Sure. So I spoke a little bit about how I am in security when I'm not the consul. And to be honest, my first thought when I was younger, after watching some movies, was that I wanted to be an FBI agent, because that's the kind of premier, everybody thinks is the premier law enforcement agency, federal law enforcement agency in the United States. But I have a secret to share with everybody here. They think they're the premier law enforcement agency. And don't tell anybody, our FBI agent friends. I think diplomatic security, which is the part of the State Department that I work for, is actually, you know, we're in more countries than the FBI is. We're in more cities than the FBI is. Our reach is that much greater. And we build really great relationships in every city that we're in. We build really great relationships, and we are able to get stuff done with those relationships because, you know, yes, the FBI, everybody knows about them. But, you know, when you've been in places for 225 years, the FBI can't say that they've been somewhere for 225 years. We have, the State Department has, and that allows us to build those relationships, to have good working relationships with law enforcement in other countries, and to get things done. So I would say I chose well in choosing to be a diplomat, but also a federal agent.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Okay, now we're back to our Portuguese language learning. Someone said, were there any specific sounds or grammatical aspects of the Portuguese language that you struggled with in particular? Great question.
Well, you listen to me all speak, so I'm sure you can.
No.
Sure. I still, I have on the line Ana Cabral, who I work with, and when we write things, one of the hardest things I have here in the Azores presently is that I still speak with that sotaque carioca. And it's actually weird because I have the New York, a little bit of a New York accent. So then it becomes this kind of weird Minas Gerais, Mineira accent. So it's I think when we write things that I'm going to say out loud, a lot of times we have to take out, like, because I came here and I'm saying bom dia, bom dia, bom dia. Like all my D's were G's for a long time. And it's something I had to work at. And any TEs at the end were cheese, like boa noite. It was always, and I almost couldn't say it carioca there because it's something I've had to work at. So I think even within a language, you find that you're having difficulty with the pronunciation sometimes. I think some of the accents trip me up sometimes, and certainly the A tilde O can be tricky. But it's something you just have to continue to work at. And then the biggest thing for me that was difficult was coming from French in Gabon to Portuguese, because I spoke Portuguese before, but then I was speaking French for 2 years. And so some of the words are the same, spelled the same,
right?
Not pronounced the same. The one that still trips me up all the time, and I have to write out in my speeches to say it correctly, is the Portuguese word for between, which, how do you pronounce it? Entre. So I always say it French now, and then I had to kind of really try to start saying it in Portuguese again, but then sometimes the French sneaks back into my brain, and I've given up on watching the France 24/7 channel, because if I watch it just a little bit, then the French creeps back in.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And I would say that the word that continues to trick me up, because that was the following question, was there a particular word that was hard to pronounce, is definitely one of the shortest words in Portuguese, I-L-H-A. Woo! Ilya. Okay, we're gonna go on. We're gonna go on because everybody was is not quite there. I'm still working on it. We'll get there one day. We'll get there one day. But we got lots of questions in the chat.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say the one that Ana knows that she can't put in anything I ever say is entrepreneurship in Portuguese.
Empreendedorismo. Another tricky one. We're putting it on the list. Please, Ana, Teresa, save us with that one. Okay, next question. What did you think about Portuguese? O que acha dos portugueses hoje em dia corresponde à ideia que tinha antes de vir? So how has your idea of Portuguese people changed before you came and since you've been living here?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I really had an idea of Portuguese people before I came here. I know it's hard to say, but unless I didn't really know any Portuguese people in Washington. I knew Brazilians. There's a lot of Brazilians in Washington, and that's something that's very tricky, and we've already thought about for our son, because we want him to keep up with Portuguese. And what are we going to find as far as, teachers in Washington? We're probably going to have a very hard time finding continental. And of course, he has a Sotaki Michelens, which good luck finding that in Washington. But I don't know that I really had a preconceived notion before I came here, because I just, there's, I think, 10 million Portuguese in Portugal, more or less. Most of the Portuguese in the United States, I think, are in many of Azorian descent are in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, in California, some in Newark, New Jersey. I didn't really have that much contact, so I don't think I had a preconceived notion. I knew that their football team was very good, and but outside of that, I don't think I really had an idea.
Oh, that's great. And now you have the best idea of Portuguese people, Portuguese food, culture, history, music. Wonderful. All right, next. I mean, this is a wonderful adventure that you're on, a crazy journey sometimes. Do you know what country or city that you are going to live in next?
I don't. I won't know until probably November. So the way that it works for us is we get a list, and Krystle's very familiar with this process. We get a list and we're really excited about a bunch of places, and then a lot of them don't work out. And then some of the places that we're not as excited about end up being the best places we've ever been to. But I will have to say that the posting here is very sought after. And I think a lot of people want to come to the Azores. And I think that after this, I think that I'll find that I will not be going to Europe again. I think that I'll have to go somewhere else, because they see tours in places like Lisbon and places as Ponta Delgada is kind of like a relaxed tour. And because
we know that you're super busy all the time over there.
Oh yeah, we're super busy, but it's the living is good.
Yeah,
the living is good. We have wonderful food, wonderful people, wonderful beaches. And the beaches, with at least here with clean water. We don't find that everywhere in the world. So we do some tours in really nice places like Ponta Delgada or Lisbon, and then sometimes we have to do tours in places that don't have all the same amenities.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you talked about your experience in the Lusophone world, and I'm sure that comes with understanding and adjusting to different accents. So what one was the easiest to understand? Kind of Brazilian Portuguese, in some of the places that you've served in Africa, what was most natural for you?
So here in the Azores, as I mentioned, there's 9 islands. There's more than 9 accents. So even here on the island of São Miguel, which happens to have the most difficult accent in all of the Azores, the hardest to understand, and of course that's the one I'm living on. It sounds like French almost if you listen to the accent here. I think as far as understanding, I can understand very well Portuguese from the continent, from Lisbon. I think you also have a lot of regional diversity of accents in the continent. I think I can understand very well people from, I think Alentejo, isn't that one of the ones that's easier?
Alentejo, yeah, I love the Porto accent, actually. It's just so different. But of course, Alfacinha, Lisbon accents, I love them too. So yeah, you just get used to it. And at first it sounds, you're like, wait, I thought I learned Portuguese. Like these are different accents and people speak fast, but then your ear kind of tunes to it, right? And then you kind of can switch between different accents and people kind of adjust to you. So that's awesome. So someone asked, things are opening up, things are getting better in Portugal, which is a great sign, and hopefully things continue. Which country are you dying to visit, when you're able to take another vacation outside of Portugal?
So I know this is going to seem like a cop-out answer, but I'm really excited to discover more of Portugal. So I know very well the islands at this point. I'm only missing 2 of the 9 islands. I still have to go to Graciosa and São Jorge, but I'm planning to visit the Algarve on my next vacation. So
Nice.
there's still a lot of Portugal to be discovered. So I'm looking forward to discovering more of Portugal. And I think I might try at some point to visit a friend in France, but those are the next vacations, Portugal.
Yes, continental Portugal, awesome. The Algarve is fantastic. I hope to get there in the next few weeks as well. So someone's interested in kind of your journey to, diplomatic service. What did you actually study that, helped prepare you for this career in diplomacy?
Sure. So for any federal agent that works at any of our numerous law enforcement agencies in the United States, you have to have a college degree. It's a requirement. And it's the same for foreign service generalists like Krystle. That's the minimum, that there has to be a bachelor's degree. Mine was in history. It doesn't really seem something that's well suited to law enforcement, but I spoke a little bit before about how I'm charged with the Marines and the security at the embassies and consulates have to report to me. I'm a program manager. That's what I really am. I'm not necessarily in one of these really cool action movies where I'm kicking down doors, and sometimes maybe in the United States I'm doing that, but not overseas. That's what we have the Marines and the security to do. So you need to have somebody who's good at managing programs, and it's not always glamorous.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I liken it to babysitting. But that's what it is. It's program management. I think what history gives me, and it's that when you approach a security situation in a country, you need to know what happened in the past, especially, if there's been conflict in the past. You need to know the political parties. You need to know how they get along with each other and who people coming up are. There's a lot more to security than just having people with guns. There's a lot more to it.
Absolutely. This is a great question. In your opinion, do you think that speaking Portuguese gives you an advantage on the global market, the job market?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely do. I was just talking to my mom about this 2 nights ago. This would have been 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I thought very hard about leaving the State Department. I haven't really had any thoughts of it since, but I received a job offer from a company that works for Disney, and that company is ESPN, which I'm sure everyone here is familiar with ESPN. And they wanted me because I spoke Portuguese.
Oh, wow.
They wanted somebody who spoke English and Portuguese, and it was for their South America division, doing security. So absolutely, it made me more attractive to ESPN that I did speak Portuguese. I was serving in Rio at the time, and that was when we had the World Cup coming just 3 years later, the Olympics coming 5 years later. So it was very good thinking from Disney and from ESPN to be thinking that far in advance. I ultimately did not choose to leave the State Department, but I think it absolutely did make me more marketable. And I've heard the same from others. I have a very good friend who was working security at the embassy in Brasilia,
Mhm.
and she went to Uber, and they wanted her for Uber security because she spoke Portuguese and fluent English. So she went to the American International School in Brasilia and then worked at our embassy there, and she was taken by Uber.
Wow, wow. Well, great examples of how learning English and Portuguese gives you a competitive edge. So I hope that's an inspiration for all of our English language students here. Invest in your language learning, stay with it, become, fluent, and use it to your advantage when you're trying to land your dream job. So that's awesome. Do you feel any difference between, American people and people that you've met between the Azores? In the Azores, do you note any differences, or is it really surprising how much you have in common in terms of shared values and shared culture?
Sure. I think, I spoke a little bit about how we don't know how many Americans are here. We have 5,000 that have registered, but we think it's so much more. And the thing that's, I think, a little bit different than the mainland is, if you look at the people who are descendant from Portuguese in the United States, and there's, maybe 1.5 million descendants of Portuguese in the United States, most of those are descended from Azorians. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with the whale trade, and then also, migration to California, some to Hawaii, Hawaii and California, again, a lot to do with the whale trade. But then also, in 1957, we had a volcano, which I promise I'm not scared of the volcanoes here, but we had this big volcanic eruption on Fayal Island, another one of the islands. And John F. Kennedy, who was at that time a state senator from Massachusetts, had the Azorian Refugee Act, which brought a lot of Azorians to the United States. So I think for the Azores in the United States, I mean, you see people wearing football, and when I say football, I mean American football jerseys here for the New England Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
You see people wearing Boston Red Sox, the baseball caps here. And the people who are here, by and large, have a Boston accent. We've talked a lot about accents today. So there's a huge, New England, California, to a lesser extent, Hawaii, but a huge connection there. And it's made this tour so much more enjoyable because, we're already family. The Portuguese in the Azores in the United States, they're family. Everybody here has a cousin that's in the US, and a lot of the Azorian language is a little bit, and I say language because in this case I do mean language. Portuguese is a language, but there's words here that you don't have in the mainland, like sweater. We use sweater to mean a sweater here, because it comes from the US. Like gama is chewing gum. There's words here that you don't have in the mainland. Vaca Michelena, which is a vacuum cleaner, but it also is a cow from San Miguel. So there's all sorts of words that we have here that are kind of derived from English because of how close the ties are.
Yeah, no, of course. And our time is running short, but our last question to you is, what advice would you give maybe to any of the aspiring diplomats in the group, or people who are looking to have a global career where you can travel and learn different language? What advice would you give students looking to have a global career or serve in diplomacy?
Sure. I think I think having a global career, I think, it's funny. I think back to my husband, who when I mentioned that I was in Afghanistan and then I went to Rio de Janeiro, and I only had 3 months back in the United States in between. And that's when I met my husband. And I told him, I said, oh, and by the way, I only met him 2 months before I left. I'm going to leave in 2 months and move to Rio de Janeiro. He's like, Yeah, right, you are. I said,
All right, you are.
no, I'm going to leave in 2 months and move to Rio de Janeiro. You know, if you really want to have a global career, you got to find, and if you want to have, you know, maybe a family or a kid, you know, you got to find somebody who's going to be along for that ride. I'm not saying that you shouldn't consider it, but it does, and there's nothing to say that you can't do it for a little while and then choose something else. But I think that there is definitely a thought process there, and on this end, it was more for him. He had to think, am I going to follow this lady that I met 2 months ago around for the rest of my life? And that was a slow process. That didn't happen. But it all comes back for me to family. And if you have a family that can support you and can support that, then that's a good start.
Absolutely. I would echo all of that and say that this was the best decision I ever made, to join the Foreign Service, to be able to be, you know, a representative of our country, to be able to learn and share and grow through all of the people I've met and learned from. So I would totally echo all of that. Family is so important, but I also love to say that we build a family in any place that we go, by the people that receive us, welcome us, and teach us about the spirit of friendship. So
Absolutely.
I think we are out of time, but thank you so much. I'd like to close by saying this has certainly been a fun and insightful way to mark both World Portuguese Language Day and Foreign Affairs Day. A sincere muito obrigada to you, Kathryn, for joining us. Thank you for your service to our country and for showing us the Lusophone world and the Azores through your eyes. And if anybody's interested in following Kathryn and her adventures in her time in the Azores, please check her out on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle? I see you have it back there. Yes, U.S. Consul Azores on Insta. Please definitely follow her. She has lots of fun things going on over there. I definitely need to see her before I head out. And I'd also like to give a sincere thanks to our amazing teams, both at the U.S. Embassy in Lisbon and at the consulate in the Azores. Thank you, Anna and Teresa and Vitor, for all your help setting up today's session. And lastly, to all of you, to all of the students and teachers, thank you for attending another inspiring U.S. Embassy Storyteller Summit and seeing the value of language learning and diplomacy. So we hope all of you have a great day and enjoy, and stay tuned for upcoming announcements about future virtual sessions. We hope you enjoy what's going to be a wonderful and sunny day, hopefully wherever you are, and we appreciate you coming. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day.